We are recording. And I'd like to call the regular monthly meeting of the Salem Board of Education to order at 6 p.m. Would people please stand for the pledge? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. The door is locked. The door got turned down.
I didn't get that.
How do you go?
Even I don't get that.
Do you have a key?
I've got Julie.
If she's not there, I have mine.
Yeah. There was somebody at, there was a.
Do you want to go do the pause for the photo since he's here?
At this point, I'd like to open up the meeting to public comment. If there's anybody here who would like to address the board, share their thoughts or questions or concerns. Sir, if you would come to the podium
Sure.
and tell us your name and.
Dave Gallard, I'm the custodial grandparent of a fifth grader. I guess my concerns are what I read in the free press. I thought just my student was having a tough time, but based on what I read in there, most of the school is not doing very well in math.
You said the free press, that they, I'm sorry, I haven't seen it yet. Is
That was
there,
the last edition.
Yeah, it just came out. There'll be a similar article in, so Greenwich. So I think there'll be a similar article. I don't know if they're all connected, but Greenwich, and Salem, they're, eluding me right now, the press, yes, Salem Press, thank you. So that they'll be doing a similar article on our results, and I have a little comment on that in our report.
Well, it just
Sorry to
seems like,
interrupt you.
seems like all of the schools in the county and probably the state are failing. Some students are not up to par, they're not up to grade level. Just understand why that would be happening. Is that Common Core? Is it the way they're teaching it?
actually, this is something I'm gonna be honest with you, I've not seen the article, so I don't want to make a misstatement. So is that something that we could take a look at and then get back to you? Would you leave your contact information with us?
We have it,
Oh, okay.
yes.
And that way we can,
Well, I mean, I'm just wondering, is that inaccurate? Are the,
I will, so I don't know, do you want to have a question and answer? Typically, we don't.
I don't have anything else.
For the public comment. But I'm going to speak about a little bit about it in my superintendent's report. So, and I will call you, and if you have additional questions,
okay.
if I don't cover it, what your questions are. If I don't cover it, I'll call you, we can discuss it. But in a few minutes, I'm gonna address some of this. I
Okay.
think some of your concerns.
All right, thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Anybody else? Okay, at this point, there will be another public comment session later in the meeting, and turn the meeting over to the superintendent for presentations and reports.
Good evening, everyone. So I don't know why, it seems like every time we try to schedule a budget workshop for our first topics, we have a weather event. So I'm hoping this is not going to be a trend. But we did have two cancellations of our first budget workshop, which was just to go over and just give some highlights of what we have on our list for facilities and transportation for next year. We won't show you actual numbers at this time, but just want to kind of preset you. The board thought there was value to that last year, kind of chunking things up and doing some additional work. So we're going to speak about that a little bit this evening. Mrs. McGregor will talk about that. Mr. Yakubek is here to assist if there are any questions that come your way with facilities. Mr. Wilbur had emailed me this afternoon and had to leave work, to handle an emergency, and he was not certain whether or not he would be able to return, but if, Karen and I, are unable to answer your questions regarding transportation, we will certainly get back to the board. And I think on my weekend update, I can do that for you. So, McGregor, take it away.
Okay, so I'm just gonna start with the transportation highlights. Much like last year, we had a great need for an additional mechanic slash bus driver. We cut that from last year's budget, so we definitely need to keep that in this year. That's, from what I'm understanding, gonna be a very difficult position to fill, mainly because of the bus driving piece. If we can't, Julie and I would talk to Joe, maybe we can look for even a dispatcher, just some help in the office, because Joe is out driving, Joel is out driving. Somebody needs to man the phones and be in the bus garage. So that's kind of a piggyback on last year's, but we're gonna make sure it happens this year, one way or another. There's a giant need for sub bus drivers, not just bus drivers, but our minivans. Keep putting that out there. If somebody wants to do the minivan, the requirements are a lot less than a full-size bus.
So it's not a CDL license?
It is a CDL, but it's a limited, so it's not as stringent, you know, and doing even a 35 or 65 passenger bus is a lot different than a minivan. So we actually have an aide, I believe, that's taking the course now to do the van driving. I'm thinking about it too. I mean, we need it so badly right now. So as far as new vehicles, he's looking to lease a 59 passenger wheelchair bus, a 65 passenger full-size bus, and a 35 passenger bus. Along with that, he'd like to purchase a new 2023 Chrysler Pacifica minivan. That'll be on the state bid price. We didn't purchase a minivan last year, and we're really using them a lot for these onesie twosie runs that we have for students.
And I can give you a hard copy of, we can send these notes over to you.
Yeah.
For you to digest before our next meeting.
And then, we'll also need to increase our budget for our contract transportation. I mean, everybody knows Durham is the only game in town, but we still need to post for it. And this year we budgeted 120,000, and we're gonna increase that by about 5,000. But it's down. So if Joe were here, I was gonna have him tell us what buses we were gonna be replacing, so I did write that down, but as you know, he has a rotation, so whatever we're adding on to our fleet, we're taking off. And again, you know that our leases are always 5-year leases. And, that's about it for just highlights. Do you have any questions, like for the needs of people? Or-
It's not really about one of his needs, but he had gotten program to help with the routing of the
Yes.
buses. Has he found that to be helpful? Has he been able to utilize that?
We actually talked to him about that, didn't we, Julie?
Yes, and he, has been helpful, and actually, right now, we are short, I don't wanna jinx it, but we're pretty short on substitutes, right now, especially for our afternoon run. And, our afternoon runs, and so one of the things we talked about is possibly being able to utilize that, program to possibly combine runs in if there's an emergency need. You may or may not notice, there are times when some districts are short on drivers, and some of them, I don't know how they do it or why, but some districts are just saying, we can't, we're not doing, transporting a certain run today or certain runs. So, we certainly don't want to ever be in that situation. We feel like if we do get into that situation, we would either combine runs, or we may say certain runs are on a 1 hour delay or something like that. But we've been talking about our options and possibly looking to combine runs if we need to in emergency situations, and how that might work for routing. So it has a lot of capabilities that are very helpful to us.
Well, that's good that
Yes.
it was.
Yeah.
Yes.
If we looked at, I don't know what our breakdown of buses and numbers are. But have we done a reevaluation based on our population on whether there's a real need for, I mean, I'm looking at a 65 passenger bus. Do we really need that?
So, interestingly, and I don't know if I had printed it, it might be in my pile that Gina just grabbed for me. I printed something for the board. We had a question on, transporting student. We had a request, and so I was looking at the law. And the law actually requires you to, have a certain capacity above and beyond what your need is. So,
I guess just 65 passenger bus is 12% of our population.
Right.
Is.
they're
is-
not, but you have to fill for, so we have to be careful to not fill for just the percent that's riding.
Mhm.
So, I think it is a good, question. I'm not sure if he looks at that regularly, and that's something that we can look into, if everybody rode the bus that is eligible.
Right.
Plus 10%, would that still fill all of our
Yeah.
65 passenger buses? Is
Well,
that would be,
That's what I'm asking. That's,
right?
Get high schoolers in there, it's
Mhm.
not 65 passenger buses.
oh, I get it. Yeah.
And, all those extra things as well.
It'd be interesting to see if, how many 65 passenger buses do we have? And the cost has got to be significantly lower for a smaller bus, and the operating costs of it as well. I just think it'd be worthwhile to take a look at that.
Explain the need, detail.
And I know the rules are that we have to provide a seat for every kid here plus a certain percentage above that. I get that. I don't want to say that I agree with it completely, but I get it. And it might be a good thing to reevaluate periodically.
Yep, that's a question that we'll ask him, and I'll give you that.
Thank you. Thank you.
All right, so I'll move on to buildings and grounds, and Paul is here to back me up or correct me or elaborate on anything we're talking about. So this year, as you know, we've talked about this in detail, is a need for the building condition survey, or the BCS. We have a quote from Mosaic on that, and it is aidable, but we still have to front the money. So that is $11,500. There's a great need for paving and striping of our parking lots, and we are waiting for Peckham and one other company to give us a quote. So I don't have that number for you, but that is
They've been here, they just haven't gotten
Yeah.
it back to me
they've
yet.
been here to look at it, so just don't have a number yet.
Definitely the need.
There's a need for, in the budget for some roof repairs that Paul is budgeting for. We also must have a physical inventory this year. We go through Quest Star 3. That quote is also forthcoming. It's gonna be around 15,000. And this is really necessary since our building project to get our fixed assets and everything where they need to be. Because we're still back on our old, physical inventory. We also are looking at budgeting for some additional security from the primary building to the main building. This is minor, but it's kind of a nice little side note. Paul is, having uniforms for his staff. It'll be shirts, not full uniforms, but shirts, so they're all, we're doing more, that's actually a security thing as well. So these guys walking around along in the building, their staff, their custodial. So we're kind of excited about that. And, you'll see on the agenda, we are appointing a custodian. So Paul is finally fully staffed, and we don't see any need for any additional hiring. So that's really a good thing for his team.
It's been great.
Yes, and we've been seeing a lot of efficiencies, that we haven't seen in a long time,
We're
because
caught up on a lot.
there was a lot of, shared work, and and they did a great job. In the meantime, I think
did.
the average person would not know that we were short, and that's a great testament to your team.
No, thank you.
Because I
Don't
don't
let them
think
know.
anybody would know that you were short, but we definitely will benefit from having a full staff. I just wanted to add in, and we'll talk about this a little more in a few conversations along the way about that. So Karen mentioned added security. It could be added security, or it could be upgrades or retrofitting or changes depending on how we would like to proceed with addressing the concerns that we have about the open archway. So, and I'll talk about that in a few minutes. We'll put that on hold for just a minute or two.
So does anybody have questions for the facilities portion or directly to Paul about what we're talking about this year?
What line would the parking lot come out of?
Nothing contractual.
It'll be like the repairs, how would that be funded?
No, it's not repairs, it's contractual under the facilities budget.
We just paid $165 to completely redo ours. So you're probably looking in the twos.
It's not a small number. We used to do it every year. Every year we did a blacktopping and striping of our parking lots.
So you're not gonna rip it up. You'll
No.
simply cover it.
So
No, just,
Okay.
they
So
would
it'd be
do a
much less.
leveling coat, obviously it needs to be level, and then a top coat.
Are you gonna extend into the other parking lot just because they're there? Yeah, no. Are you going to extend into the other parking lot, the one that's not paved?
I'm getting a quote to do that, and then we'll see what the number comes back at, and I would like to if we have.
If they're there.
Because it would be very beneficial due to bus parking, well,
Yeah.
anybody who comes to a Christmas concert.
keeping it, it'd be easier to keep.
It'd be much easier to clean and
Yeah.
take care of too also, yes.
Okay.
Luckily, right now, the ground is frozen, which is not the norm as of the last 2 years.
But yeah, it's not a certainty, so we've
Yeah.
asked them to break it out. So
Yeah,
that
it's a separate quote within the quote that we're getting.
Well, a menu of options, depending on how our numbers turn out when they all come
Yeah, what
together.
about the cart shopping?
Any other questions about that? So then that will be, as we start to put together our numbers. So our next budget workshop, which
February 5th.
is, yes, we did, change the date. And so there is a new copy of this posted on the website, about February 5th, which is a Monday at 6 PM in our high school team room.
Yeah, and that one is the admin and capital, so Paul's numbers will all be in, hopefully, and
Yeah,
that'll
it should
be
be, yeah.
tighten up as
Yeah.
close as we
Yeah.
can, and then
We should have some other, and we should have some of our estimates for
Yes.
for other programs.
Yep.
Okay. So,
Should be short.
I think this will address a portion of your concerns. I don't know if that will completely Mr. Dallard's concerns, but, I did share with the board on my, one of my recent reports that, so the New York State, updates their report card and their website in chunks sporadically. It's complicated and a little frustrating and confusing sometimes. But they now, have a portion of our, the main portion of our report card has been completed. We, as a district, have, a designation as a local support and improvement district. This is a new designation by New York State. It was added. I don't have a lot of details of what elements were targeted for that. Because it is a new designation, they don't even have really a description of how you get this designation. So Katie Jones from the Wish Me Bose's, she is the Director of School Improvement. She is coming out on Monday to meet with the administrators and myself to go through the designation, really what the elements, what we were identified for. We've known for a while that chronic absenteeism was an issue, and I suspect that will be a portion of it. And I also suspect it would be our ELA results. So in that article, and I can forward it, it's actually, I don't know if you get the free press. I don't know if they have the free press online, but, so I did get it in my box the other day. And it's similar to the one I think you'll be seeing in the Greenwich and Salem Free Press. Really just an overview of the state results for ELA and math. And the state average itself, you'd have to look at, and I don't have all the details here, and I'm planning on maybe doing a little snapshot further once I learn more on Monday at our next board meeting. So if you're able to come, Mr. Deal, that might be worthwhile. In general, the state's numbers for 3 through 8 testing are about 50%, 55% proficiency, really mid-level. As I presented the results early on in the school year, our results in ELA especially are very low. We have quite a few ones. Our math in some grade levels are on the low side. We have a couple of grade levels that are a little higher than the state average. But I would suspect that the ELA results could also possibly be one of those identifying factors. So I'm not thinking that this designation from the state will come with any extra funding. So if you officially get on their previous list of a CSI or comprehensive support and improvement or targeted support and improvement, there is funding, but there is also a lovely person from New York State Education Department who comes in and really starts guiding us as to our direction. And so I should have some more information once we have our meeting next week. So I will say, and if you heard me in my previous report earlier in the year, I did a report on our ELA and math results. At that time, I didn't know the state averages. And in some cases, we're around the state average, in my opinion, at 50% is not acceptable, even if the state is at 50%. Now we know that COVID really contributed to those gaps. We were seeing some proficiency concerns before COVID, but not to this extent. And, the COVID gap and the learning loss is real. And it takes time, money, and resources to correct that. It's going to take, and I've been very frank with the board since I've come on, that this is going to take some time. As you know, we started last year. We purchased a new ELA curriculum. So K through 6, they have consistent vertically aligned curriculum, which was, I think, an opportunity for us before that. I think that although teachers were doing good work, the work was not what we say scaffolding or building on each other in every grade level. So we purchased with our federal grant money from the COVID money, they call it ARP or the American Rescue Plan money. We did purchase new curriculum for all K through 6. We purchased new math curriculum, which we are implementing this year for the first time. And we plan to partially, if not fully, implement science curriculum next year. So these are things that have been lacking in the district for several years. And that lack of consistency and alignment, I think our teachers have done a good job and they want to be aligned to the standards, but it's difficult when you don't have the resources to support that work. So we are providing that as well as professional development. We also, with our Title I funding, I sent out an email a few weeks ago to all families, faculty, staff, community members. We have to let everybody know how we're spending our title funds with our Title I funding for improvement of instructional practice. We have hired a literacy coach and consultant that is working 2 days a week with the district from now until for the rest of the year. As to really help us take a look and a deep dive at not only how do we utilize this new curriculum, but what do we need to do for academic interventions? How do we work with reading groups? Do we need additional resources for our teachers to provide professional development for our teachers? And really have that focused conversation. As you know, we only have single principals, administrators for each building. That provides a lot of challenge because their time is taken up they can't just be instructional leaders, they're disciplinarians, they're handling, discipline, they're handling issues, they're meeting with families. There's so many other things, that our principals are doing as well, so I think that's going to be money well spent, so we're working on that. We're also working on, this year's our first year of the instructional co-teach model, which, further supports not only students who are special ed students, but all students in the classroom, and really taking a two-teacher approach in a lot of our classrooms where students who needed a direct consultant teacher model previously, those teachers were just there to support them. Now it's an instructional co-teach, a special education teacher is teaching with the content teacher. We're piloting that in grades 2, 4, 6, 8, and 9. Next year, we will be expanding on that and to almost all grade levels, and we'll be at instructional co-teach at all levels, and at least one section at every grade level in the content areas by year 3.
How do you know you're gonna be doing it enough or be doing the right things? Because it seems like you never wanna wait for the state exams to come out. Like, for me, I never wanna find out in February that I screwed up last year. And so how do you evaluate, you're being effective?
So I would say that it's, when you look at the numbers, it's not about screwing up. It's really, are we doing everything we can to utilize the data?
Do you have
To
data?
Yes, we do. So we have data, and that's what we're working on, is improving not only, our number of data points. So before we had only the New York State test. We've added in over the past, this is our 3rd year of using iReady. So everything, I've been, working with the faculty and the staff to really, add things in. We can't do everything at once because it's very overwhelming, not only for the teachers, but for students to be taking, a million tests all over the place. But so we have to really be strategic in how we utilize and complement. But we have iReady, which is a diagnostic. We utilize that 3 times a year. And that's for ELA and math, as well as, HMH is its own diagnostics, which our teachers are becoming more familiar. This is year 2, so it's Houghton Mifflin. It's a reading, publisher and company that's aligned to next gen standards. And so, this literacy coach will be working with, our elementary principal and teachers on how to utilize the diagnostics, and benchmarking tools that we have. We also have purchased,
Are you seeing acceptance of iReady and those other?
yes, we are. I will tell you that we, also have purchased, now this is relatively new and we're just piloting and we're just learning about it right now, a little ways, but, it's a means as a data warehouse called Linkit. And, so we purchased it with the ARP money and did a lot of the startup, and then we'll be maintaining it through the general fund. Basically a data warehouse that will take New York State assessments, it will take, diagnostics, it'll take interventions that maybe are occurring in AIS class. It will take chronic apps, it'll take attendance data, it might take discipline data. And we also have something that we're starting to phase in called the, mini DESA, and that's for social emotional learning. That is a requirement in New York State, is that we have a tool that assesses those social emotional needs. And what Linkit will do is it will take all of those data, all of that data, and house it in one place and create, reports that are comprehensive for us to, so if Tom Clary is struggling in 3rd grade,
Louise Clary, that's her name.
we'll say Tom. We'll say, Tom, if you're struggling in 3rd grade, then our child study team can access this report. We don't have to spend a lot of time pulling all the reports and trying to align the data and what does it all mean? It pulls it all together. It can even, once we can utilize that more fully, probably take a year or 2, but once we have some really solid data, and we're working with our reading teachers, our elementary teachers, and our literacy coach, it will even help us identify the optimal reading groups. So when we do whole group, whole instruction, but we also do small group reading. that will really help identify students with similar needs, similar strengths or similar challenges. And so that's where we need to be going with the data. And I would say is we have to be careful because, you know, the work we're doing is, it's important and meaningful, but it should not be a testament of what the teachers have done or not done. This is what has been provided to them over the years. Hindsight's 2020, but in my opinion, they did not have all the tools in the professional development to get them to this point. And it's going to take a while now to do that. I'm gonna tell you that sometimes it's overwhelming because we had the state, you know, we were working with the state in some ways last year with special ed. There were things that we had to do right away. And we only have ARP money for 3 years. So we can't wait a few years to then start a math program. And do we really want to at maybe 40% proficiency, 50% a lot of grade levels? So we're asking a lot of our teachers, so we have to be patient. We have to be patient, we have to give them the tools and the resources that they need. So we are doing a lot of that. I would say almost every district could see this coming just with the learning loss from COVID. You know, it's hard for elementary students, especially the youngest students, you know, foundationally, we're gonna see this for several years. And then it's how do we use the data to remediate it? It's hard to teach someone how to read virtually. It's very difficult.
It's gonna
I
be.
would think a good way to look at that is you've got a 5th grade student now who is really learning at a 3rd grade level.
Yes. Our third graders were kindergartners
Yeah.
when COVID hit, so they didn't get that foundational stuff that they really
Right,
needed. So
right.
we are still playing catch up.
Right, and, you know, so it's important to realize that the third grade test, right? It's still a 3rd grade test where maybe our students are, you know, between 2nd and 3rd grade. You know, I think we have closed some gaps. I think we're gaining, but we're still going to see them. And I think really the biggest challenge are the social emotional, issues and concerns and, you know, socially students struggled during COVID and struggled returning, many of them, depending developmentally where they were. And that's another piece that's affecting the learning. So there's so much that we need to, so we can have this data warehouse, but then we have to learn how to unpack that data. And that'll take a little time, but we're on it, we're working at it. It's not acceptable where we are. It's not, there's no way to explain it away. And we can say it's COVID and learning loss, and it is, but we have to be on it, and we are on it. And we're working, you know, every day to make those improvements. So you'll see that, you'll see me coming next year and telling you that, you know, I envision having this literacy coach probably for about 3 years. Because it's just not a one and done.
Yeah.
Some of these things are not going to be one and done.
We definitely have the problem in our household, and it drives my wife nuts because she, you know, and it's difficult. It's an uphill climb, and you have to. Yeah.
But I think it'll be interesting over the next several years with all of the things we have in place to follow the catch up and to see how,
It's a long-term commitment.
yeah.
It is, and we have to have that as a long-term commitment. So no matter who, you know, we hope to have a very, you know, the goal is to have a stable leadership team, right? We haven't had that in a long time. But what's even more important is having a really strong foundation, systems and programming. So no matter who your leaders are, you have a strong foundation, and, you know, it might take some time to get up to speed and you might get some bumps in the road, but you shouldn't be crippled by a leadership change, in my opinion. So, you know, that's something that we have to do, and we're working the best we can. You know, money's tight, but we're making it work, and it's kind of, I don't know if you know read Stephen Covey, but it's really hard sometimes, right? Because we want to hurry up already, and we need to get the work done, and we want our you know, to do the best we can. but it said we have to stop to sharpen our saw, or it's gonna take us longer to cut down the tree, right? And our kids can't, you know, our kids right now who are in the midst of this, right, they can only learn so much, but they can't wait for 5 years for us to, you know, make it happen, so we have to balance that, so it's a challenge. You know, we're going to be honest, it's a challenge with us every day. And, you know, it's a great appreciation for everybody who's contributing. So we're working on it. So Mr. Diellard, I will, call you and see if I've answered your questions, but we can chat more.
You did say there'd be another opportunity for
Yes.
public.
Yes. And so I just want to, you know, along these lines, we talked about utilizing our title funds for a student family engagement coordinator, which I believe will really greatly help as a liaison and be able to work with our teachers and our families, our students, and really kind of be hopefully some more continuity to really provide resources and support for students to really help them be able to achieve at school. So we are doing our second interviews next week. So we have 3 candidates that are in the mix. They're all so different, but you know, all could do the job, but they bring different strengths to the table. So we'll try to sort that out next week. And so I hope to have someone on board in the next few weeks. And so quickly, I don't have a lot of information to share, but I did want to, this is what I left on the printer. I'm so excited I left out. Here's one for Gina for her notes. Somehow I didn't have it right. But- All right, we'll share right now and then, we talked about this a little bit today as an update, so she's pretty up to speed, Assistant Director. So we talked about, at the last meeting and, you know, unfortunately, although it was a close vote, a referendum was defeated for the capital project and we discussed, addressing that we still felt that it was important to address the safety and security concerns that are presented from the open archway. And so I told you that I would do a little work. This is a very rough draft costing that I will do and really be prepared to speak more about it moving forward. And I'll talk a little bit about the capital project and kind of next steps for that. We have a discussion item later in the agenda. So literally option 1 is to do nothing, make no changes at this time. It could be now, it could be indefinitely or until another capital project, you know, addresses that concern in the project. I think there are some real concerns and I would not recommend that, but certainly some of our other options will have costs attached to them and the board will have to, I guess, weigh those options. And so again, I don't have money attached, but we did briefly discuss the possibility last meeting of repurposing a portion of the primary building, if not all of it. I will tell you is in kind of a lot of our work, we've done a lot of work looking at the options over the past month. It is not possible, in my opinion. I know we had some public comment, whether it was here or at some of the forums about why can't we just move kids in classrooms around, and that is a possibility, but we cannot completely take students out of the primary. But I believe, you know, we're still working through some of the details that there is a possibility to reduce the number of students and the amount of passing back and forth, especially unattended. So possibly leaving the youngest grades, pre-K, kindergarten, those grade levels over in that building because they do have a high level of adult supervision and would not have a level of passing back and forth, during the day. I guess I'll say, I would like to be careful about, revealing all of our safety concerns on a recording. But there are concerns. So we could minimize that, move a portion, superintendent's office, the business office, and the CSE offices over into that building. And then you could leave it that way. I think efficiency wise, in the next capital project, you could create some suites and gain back a few rooms for some other uses. So for example, I don't need a whole classroom for my office, but temporarily I would, possibly need to do that. But then in the next project, you could create a suite.
Yeah.
And then gain back a couple, suite for CSE, a suite for the business office. So that could be a possibility. And so, again, I'll go over this in more detail, but, possibly moving grades 1 and 2 back into the main building and creating some grade level configurations and groupings that make sense, the lower grades together, the intermediate 3, 4, 5 together, having a middle level hallway. So it does lead to some real building use efficiencies. We could move the guidance office over right next to a main entrance, so you don't have people walking in all the time. So there's some added value that necessarily you would not get with the archway, but there is some added value in there to make it worth a while. However, once we cost this and really looking at this further, if this is the route we end up going, it requires moves, it requires a lot of work. It can be done, but I would recommend then we be settled with this. And this is, to me is, we had the capital project, the asbestos removal, we had COVID, we've had so many changes over the past few years that, it's a lot for our facilities crew. It's a lot for everybody who moves. It's an undertaking. And then I would suggest that if we did choose that option, that we would be settled and say, we're not revisiting this for 5 or 10 years, a few projects down the road, because it's a huge impact to everybody. There will be some cost involved. I don't think it would be a significant cost. Part of that would be also rerouting the buses. We'll talk about that a little more, next meeting. We could, and really shutting down that driveway, utilizing security planners. The other big piece of it is eliminating, so with the elementary office where it is, the elementary office would move in the main building possibly. It eliminates all that public access in that area. So it's very difficult to secure that main building door across the way. People, it could be 7:45 in the morning. It could be, in the middle of the day. There are people passing through all day long, and naturally people are getting the door held open for them. And I get maybe they're your neighbor, them, but it just cannot happen. And by taking all of that away, moving the elementary office, having a different public entrance, you really only keep that to a very limited passing of possibly students or faculty and staff. There should be no reason why anybody from the public that does not work here or even if you have business in the district, they would not be using those 2 doors. So that would really reduce. None of the options are going to resolve what connecting would do. But we could make a very good effort, and really make some positive change there in terms of safety and security. So we'll talk about that a little more at our next meeting once we have the costing. The third option is, some people brought up, well, you could just hire somebody to monitor that area and be a crossing guard per se. That's possible. That will cost some money. it's a person who would probably, they're gonna need to get a fair sum of money. What happens when that person is absent? That it's still not necessarily possible for them to really control or secure the area or two doors at once. It is an option though.
In my opinion, I think that if our concern is security and safety, option two is the only, option three is really pretty close to option one, in my view. One security guard there is not gonna be that big a help. It'll make a difference, maybe, but if our concern is the safety of these kids and the security of this building, option two is the only one that really provides us with that.
I like option two because it reminds me of when I was living in New York City and the city decided to take back its streets. And so they put up these safety barriers or these planters, and they became excellent pedestrian areas. And it's New York City, it's Times Square, so those planters have to be substantial. They have to hold back a car that's going 60 miles an hour. And, you see that in DC as well. So I have to wonder if, those planters can provide the safety, but then it's also an opportunity to take back that area as a pedestrian area or an outside area for people to enjoy without creating a.
Yeah.
If we're discouraging kind of public access to those areas, not only by car, but by pedestrian. There'll be some passing through, but we would also minimize a lot of the unattended passing through. There's gonna be people going back and forth, but to minimize the frequency and the amount of people that are doing it, I think would, again, this is probably the most that we can do. If you, God forbid, we ever have a tragedy or an event, we have to be able to look back and say, we did everything we could, right? And I'm not sure, without enclosing it at this point, we haven't, I think this comes pretty close.
Yep.
So it's something, again, there could be other ideas. I drafted some bullet points for you. If you have thoughts or questions, or need more information, or, just send it to me so I could be prepared. Because these they do have budget implications. Again, not saying that, $20,000 or whatever that would be, is not a lot of money, but it's not significant like a capital outlay, implication, but we want to have our budget properly accounted for. It also takes time, and we do need to plan the moves. So we've talked about it here. I'm working on usually every other month or so, I send out either news and notes and some updates. And so I am going to, let the faculty know that we're exploring our options. And that, if they were interested to come to the meetings and come to, ask questions.
Yeah.
So, this is kind of the road we're going down. I did meet yesterday, Mr. Yakubik and I met with a company. There'll be some added security that we would do, for some of the doorways, some of the entryways. So for example, if we swap the elementary office with my office suite, that would require a doorbell, electronic access. Right now, we have a Ring doorbell. We can't buzz in, we can't see who's out there. We would want to upgrade that. They did tell me that there are several grants that most likely would be available to help cover that cost. So those are some of the things I'm working on right now. I should have that by February.
Good, thank you.
And finally, that was like the big chunk. The rest of our meeting is pretty quick. David and I met today. We weren't sure if you've been a busy holiday wrestling season, so he wasn't sure he had much on his list, but I just wanted to check in with you. Did you have any reports?
I don't believe I have anything in this meeting.
Okay. We did talk a little bit about some future topics. So.
The international travel program?
Oh, my apologies.
We're excited
We,
about that.
we got distracted by the picture. We forgot to discuss the changes. So
Okay.
I did mention in one of my reports that that was being explored. But speaking to, recently, did not speak with Mrs. Maxwell, but Lori Fraunhofer did share that at this time, they thought it might be cost prohibitive.
Okay.
And they were gonna wait a little longer and maybe plan something a little further out. Especially with, although it's not a school function, a lot of our students in the band and chorus are going to Germany this summer with a community group, and it just seemed like it was a lot to ask of families or people buying things that are being sold to raise money. It would have been a lot of competition for fundraising and those types of things. So,
Okay.
so I apologize. We got off track about our changes to the agenda, but we will, hopefully we will explore a trip in the future.
All right, thank you.
My script, my cue.
That's okay. We recovered.
So, you're, today is yours.
I am. Actually, one last thing. I did want to just mention, about back to the budget items that, I think there was some discussion about it when I walked in. So they've done a first aid on state aid, first run for state aid. Just want to be clear that that is a very preliminary initial number. It's proposed for the budget, and what our allocation would be. It's a slight increase of probably about $500,000, 5%. But I really want to caution everyone, as we look at that, $500,000 is a fair chunk of change, and that would be really helpful with a lot of the increases that we're facing, inflationary increases. We're going to be having increases to employee retirement, health insurance, things like that. So, obviously that's helpful, but we should not get excited because it has to, in the end, the budget has to be approved by the state legislature. And these numbers almost always change from the preliminary run, sometimes not very much. Sometimes there could be a fair amount for or against us. So as we get more information, we'll just remind you so you can see that. And we usually have a pretty good idea if the budget's on time by the time we're doing our final budget talk. But we usually can get a better idea when we're closer. But, it is encouraging. The other thing is important, and I will send to the board, because it sounds like some of you were looking at it. I didn't bring it with me, but when you look at the state aid run, there are about 4 or 5 pages ahead of that really explain every category, every line of state aid. And what's important to note is although they compare your increase to like this current budget year, what they really do is when they say you could get the maximum of a certain calculation or a 3% increase, right? They're talking about 3% on 2022-23 school year, not this year. So you see our this year's budget, so our foundation aid, 22-23 was 5.9 million-ish. And so it's really an increase on that. That's the number they're using when they do their calculations, not what we're getting this year. So just important, some of those. So I'll share that with the board in case you need something to read before bed. But it does help you because you do have to you have to remind yourself that it's not the previous year comparison of what we're in right now. It's 22-23. All right.
Does anyone wish to remove an item from the consent agenda?
No,
Entertain a motion to accept the consent agenda as presented.
so moved.
Second.
And all those in favor, please signify by raising your hand. Motion carried 5-0. And we do have some committees ongoing, but we did the finance. We have the update from Mrs. McGregor. Anything additional to add with that? Just underneath the policy committee, we've been working on some policies, and I've been gathering together the information that Dan and I put together for the public comment update, and I'm gonna get that to Gina, so hopefully from next month, we'll have a first read on this. So,
We are also evaluating whether or not to stay with Erie One or go with NISBA policy service. Erie One is projecting a sizable increase. And so I recommended and that we take a look at what NISBA has to offer as well as what their cost is. They do, and so I know some of you have been to some of NISBA's offerings, and Jay Rorona is their legal counsel, head legal counsel, and they just really have a really overall, I think, great service, and I think it's worth looking at. They sent Gina a couple sample policies the other day. They're a little more comprehensive in terms of some options, so we just have to really look at the costing, and then we'll make a recommendation.
Moving on to personnel items. Entertain a motion to approve the retirement payout to case for Lori Patrick as presented. So motion by Heidi,
Second.
second by Peter. All those in favor, please signify by raising your hand. Motion carried 5-0. Entertain a motion to approve the probationary appointment of Rep. Webster Madison as a custodian effective January 16, 2024. Mr. Madison is required to take the civil service test for this position and be reachable on the list. His fingerprints are on file. So, Heidi?
Second.
Second by Peter. All in favor, please signify by raising your hand. Motion carried 5-0. Entertain a motion to approve the probationary appointment of Julie Lurby as a part-time teacher aide effective January 2nd, 2024. Fingerprints are on file in the district office.
So moved.
Second.
Second by Heidi. All those in favor, please signify by raising your hand. Motion carried 5-0. Entertain a motion to approve the appointment of Tiffany Talmadge as part-time teacher aide effective February 8th, 2024. For fingerprints on that. Heidi.
Second.
Second by Peter. All those in favor, please signify by raising your hand. Motion carried 5-0. Entertain a motion to approve the appointment of Christine Maury as a substitute teacher aide effective January 11th, 2024. Fingerprints are on file in the district office. Motion by Heidi.
Second.
Second by Peter. All those in favor, please signify by raising your hand. Motion carried 5-0. Entertain a motion to approve the appointment of Donna Jarvis as a substitute cafeteria worker effective January 18th, 2024. Fingerprints are on file in the district office.
So moved.
Motion by Peter. Second by Jen. All those in favor, please signify by raising your hand. Motion carried 5-0. Entertain a motion to approve the appointment of Stacy Rich as a volunteer girls basketball coach, modified level for the 23-24 school year. So, motion by Heidi,
Second.
second by Peter. All those in favor, please signify by raising your hand. Motion carried 5-0. Entertain a motion to approve the 2024 mileage reimbursement rate of 67 cents per mile effective January 1st, 2024. This is a 1.5 cent per mile increase from 2023. Motion by Heidi.
Second.
Second by Peter. Is that statutory if they raise the rate overall? Is that what happened?
Yep. We go with the IRS established rate. Yeah.
All those in favor, please signify by raising their hand. Motion carried 5-0. If there's no objections, I'd like to move to waive the second reading and move to adopt. Entertain a motion to waive the second reading and move to adopt the new policy on workplace violence prevention. So that's motion by Heidi.
Second.
Second by Peter. Any further questions or concerns? All those in favor, please signify by raising your hand. Motion carried 5-0. Entertain a motion to approve the first read of the opioid overdose prevention policy.
So moved.
Second by Jen. Does anybody have any questions or concerns about that? That would just allow us to have.
So, right, there are three different options provided. to schools. This is, I think, the most manageable and, gives us the most flexibility in having people to administer it, so it allows us to keep the naloxone on site. There's a training that, New York State Education Department, provides training videos, so we can ask volunteers in the building to train. Our nurse just has to basically verify that they were trained, and we have a list. We'll keep naloxone in most likely the same areas that we keep the AEDs, in addition to the nurse's office and maybe a few other key areas, but, basically having it accessible. You know, really, most often, wherever you are publicly, there are people who carry naloxone anyway. But it's something I think that is important for us to have on site, so it allows us to be able to have it. There are other ways to do it, requires your school doctor to give orders, and it's much more complicated, and most schools utilize this and have good success with it, and, I think you're gonna see moving forward, it's gonna become a requirement. There's a lot of talk about it. So, you know, I just think that, you know, in light of what happened, I'm not sure if you're familiar, but there was a school down, in the capital region that, a student, overdosed in the cafeteria and, on a vaping device. And, he was revived with Narcan. So, you know, there's no harm in, you know, administering it. It's not known to harm people. If you're not overdosing on an opioid, it's not going to affect you. And, you know, so I think it's the right thing for us to have on site and to do for our students, our faculty, our visitors to have. And Needham, we're also working with Needham. They would be working with us.
All those in favor, please signify by raising your hand. Motion carries 5-0. Entertain a motion to accept the transportation bid from Durham Incorporated for the transportation of school students from Cambridge to Salem Central School District and return back to Cambridge without an aid. This run is being combined with an established run, so it will be an additional $28 per day. The breakdown is included.
Second.
All those in favor, please signify by raising your hand. Motion carries. Entertain a motion to set the school year 2024-2025 non-resident tuition rates for the Vermont student as presented. Motion by Heidi.
Second.
Second by Peter. Those in favor, please signify by raising your hand. Motion carried 5-0. Entertain a motion to approve the agreement between Salem Central School and Hillary S. Adams, titled Contract for Consult Physical Therapy Services rendered effective December 1st, 2024. Okay, June 30th, 2024.
So moved.
Is that Jen?
Yes.
All those in favor, please signify by raising your hand. Motion carried 5-0. Entertain a motion to approve the agreement between Salem Central School and Helping Hands Physical Therapy, titled Special Education Department Consulting Agreement, effective January 8th, 2024 through June 30th, 2024.
So moved.
By Peter.
Second.
By Tom. All those in favor, please signify by raising your hand. Motion carried 5-0. Okay, that was actually a pretty short list as for action items.
Yeah.
Is it common to have a physical therapist on site? What is that?
Yes, we do. So this right now is, to replace, just to help us temporarily. We've had a posting out for a few months for a part-time physical therapist, and we have had nobody answering the ad. So, as you know, our physical therapist retired at the end of January, so we do not have one right now, and so we have, obviously to meet some IEP needs, so we need to have, this agreement until we find one. I would, just let the board know that I, have had some initial talks, not necessarily going in this direction, but similar when we were looking for a speech therapist, a lot of times there's a lot of competition, so if someone can get a full-time versus a part-time, they would rather go with for full-time. Cambridge may also be in need of some part-time PT, so we're exploring the possibility of maybe sharing a full-time person. And so, if that comes to a more solid possibility, I will let you know that. But we're just some real initial talks.
What does Cambridge need for bus drivers?
I don't know, when I drive home every day, they have a big bus out there with a sign on it that they need drivers, so.
Yeah, it's kind of amazing that we're relying on a contractor to go between Salem and Cambridge at this point.
Well, a lot of times that's for distance, going to private placements as well, you know, significantly outside of the district, which we would not necessarily be able to get our people back in time for our run. So kind of depends on what the situation is. We do share a lot with Cambridge and Greenwich. We do kind of trade off or share. So if we have those, you know, students, some of this is also our obligation under McKinney-Vento for our homeless, it's federal law. And so if a student leaves our district or a student leaves another district and wants to come to ours. So there's a couple different scenarios. We are obligated to bus them. If they leave our district and go somewhere else, we're obligated to bus them up to 50 minutes. Or if they move because they need, that's only where they can find housing 30 miles away and they want to stay at our school, they can do that and we have to go pick them up.
Yep.
And bring them. So, we do as much as possible, district share, when we can, or just, you know, they'll meet us halfway, but everybody is struggling for drivers right now.
Other business, so you mentioned the capital project, transport timeline for.
Yeah. I did speak with, John Jojo, from Mosaic Architects, recently, and they are putting together a timeline. So we had discussed tentatively that we thought maybe October would be a good time to go to a revote, maybe, fine tune our capital projects, list in terms of items on there and, you know, possibly take out the archway component. They believe that October is doable, so they're working up a timeline. That's if the board still agrees. They did say that they thought that that was a good timing, that right now SCD is taking about 5 or 6 months for approval. So he thought that quite possibly if we had an October vote, we could break ground in that spring of 2025. So
Rules were included in the.
yes, summer, yeah.
That'd be nice.
So if we push it to December, he said it would most likely not happen to break ground at that point. So, yeah, we really wouldn't lose much time.
I think it'd be important to let the community know that as well, that if we put this off any longer, we're delaying the start of the construction.
Right. Right, and I think October would be I agree, that would be a good time. I think there's a lot going on in the spring. I think because we're making changes, I wouldn't want to rush the process, rush the plan, new kind of, you know, conceptual plan and numbers. And, you know, we're asking people to vote on the budget. There could be a sewer project vote. You know, people just got their tax bills. I'm not sure it's a great time to go right out again. You know, I think we need to let the no set in and, you know, look at fine tuning our list, not rush it.
Just as a point of interest, the earlier in October, the better, I think, because you've got the November election coming up, and that.
Yes, good point.
Mhm.
Okay. Good point.
Okay, so the road from a safe distance.
So once I get that timeline, he thought he would be able to have that sometime next week. I would share that with you so that you can get your thoughts together. on that for our next conversation in February. And then once we had a more kind of definitive timeline, we'll, be bringing them in sooner than later. Really, talking about kind of our final, yeah, kind of our final draft list.
When should the survey be done?
What survey?
We were doing a building
The
survey.
building.
Yeah.
So that is timed
It has to be done in the 24.
25.
So it could be the following spring, could be after October, right? But most likely would be after October.
Right, it'll be
And then
too
their
late.
schedule will be-
Right.
Even if they came out and did it in September, you wouldn't have that for months.
Yeah.
There's a lot that goes into
Right.
that.
The other piece of it is that the majority of the big items that have been identified in the past have been
Yeah,
taken
they haven't
care of.
gotten better. Okay.
They've been taken care of. So really, the biggest thing are the roofs. And then, as we talked about, and I think, I'll have to double check, they are making safety and security part of
Assuming.
the survey, and I'm not sure what year it's starting, but it might be next year. And they will be basically pointing out safety and security concerns. So I think, if we have plans to say, okay, we're addressing our security concern of the location of the high school office, then, that's gonna go in the report, but, so I think we've anticipated the majority of it. I would be surprised if there was a real big ticket item that we had not anticipated. Do you agree?
It's a handy tool to have a recent
It's
survey
very long,
processes.
and the report is very.
Nobody's gonna read it.
Ours is somewhat interesting.
Yes, yes, it's really interesting, the detail of what they look at. Yes.
Very much.
Speaking of 24, 25 school year, we have a draft calendar.
Yeah, so I don't know why I have two, but I'm gonna go with the one that's in my folder. Do you need one? Do you have one?
Yeah, I have
So this is, very close to the BOCES, calendar. So there's a couple things I would like to point out. Not in any particular order, but, you will notice that April break, is the week leading into Easter weekend, not the week after. Our BOCES region, tries to align with the capital region. And there were some negotiations between our regions about the week before, the week after. But you will notice that there are, in addition to Juneteenth, we now have in January, you have January 29th, which is Asian Lunar New Year. That is a required school holiday. So no schools can be in session. So the argument is, I think, we're gonna try out this April break. You don't really want to be rolled over April break. It doesn't politically go very well. To be the only school not on break when everybody else is.
But it aligns with Vermont right now, so let's just.
But you gain a day at the 8th because of that Good Friday typically we give off.
Yep.
I don't think it's necessarily gonna stay there and live there, but, certainly we could go off, but we would be the only district in the capital region that would not have this week off.
I think it's nice to try to see how.
We'll see how it goes. The other thing I would point out is, so a lot of so the BOCES calendar districts, so I have, the October 11th, Superintendent's Conference Day. BOCES had November 5th, which is Election Day. A lot of schools are used for voting sites. And, there's pending legislation about, or maybe recent legislation, because I don't remember when they were going to vote on it, but about not allowing public access for voting in buildings where they could not secure the area. So, and again, we're talking about safety and
Yeah.
security, not
Yep.
just, so if we were having voting, we wouldn't be able to do that. And we'll have to look and before our budget, and I don't know if that all elections go with that or not, but, it's something. So a lot of schools have that off. We could go to that day, but there's a lot of days off already in November. And this year it worked nicely to have the long Columbus Day weekend. But, so we were looking at, doing that Friday, the 11th. So again, this is a draft. We'll be looking for approval next time. Because this was a short week, I didn't meet with, WADA, so, I always like to get their feedback as well on that. So the only thing that might change is this superintendent's conference day might move from the 11th to a different day in October, November. I want to use it earlier because, as I mentioned, this year we're doing, faculty, we're doing a big, workshop on understanding framework of poverty. There's a follow-up to that, emotional poverty, which talks about managing anger, anxiety, and violence in schools, and that social emotional component. And so I would like to do that earlier in the year, so that we could have what we call PLCs, professional learning communities groups, where our teachers could take the poverty session from this April, and then whatever we are doing in October, November with that emotional poverty, that one will be a half day. We can use that half day for something else, but then we can utilize that, right? So we do a lot of workshops and bring people in, but then we don't do anything with that. And so I think it's really important to have that opportunity through the year to work through that. So that's something that I'd like to propose sooner than later. And I really don't want to use one of those first 2 days, because if we are talking about possibly making some moves in the buildings, I think, I would like to keep that to just what we need to for our opening school year trainings and requirements, and giving some flexibility to teachers to use that, and our, related services professionals to use that in ways that will benefit them to be prepared, especially if they're in a new space. So that's kind of some of the rationale on our calendar. You see that this does go long. The other difference is on the last Friday of school, the 27th, typically you see that we have a half day the day before the last staff day. But we're not able to count that. So this year, the last day of school for elementary faculty and staff, we can't count that towards the 180 days. For high school, it's a rating day, so you can count that towards your 180. So right now, we have 4 snow days left at the high school, but only 3 left at the elementary school because I can't use that day. And most of our schools in our area do half days. So in order to kind of compensate, we'll do 2 half days at the end of the year, which I believe has been done at times in the past. But we really, with these extra, Juneteenth and the 29th, you've got a lot of these extra days now.
I was looking
We-
at your numbers there.
Right, and, so we are, as, so in terms of advocacy, so we do have, a group that represents, our region. And we've also talked to the attorneys, because what's happening is we understand that these days are important in our community, in many communities. However, it's taking time out of our, ability to achieve 180 days, without going past June 30th, which nobody wants to go past June 30th. It's hot enough. But, if there are more days of observance that are required, the next step is February break, and, that's, I'd rather not touch that. But, so we've got to try to be creative and get our 180 in. They have allowed us to count partial days. So you have to get to the 180 mark and 900 hours at elementary and 990 hours of instruction at high school. And so having 2 half days allows us to still be able to do that. So that's some of the rationale behind the calendar. And it is somewhat exciting. I will tell you that not all districts are taking 2 weeks at Christmas. So I
So that's a long
felt
Christmas break
like
this
it's
year.
worth it to juggle a few of these other things around. I'm hoping
That'll be
hoping
good.
us to agree. So I would say only a few, couple of us Washington County schools, like I called, so Cambridge wants to do it. I called Greenwich and said, I don't want to leave you out, but I think probably about half the schools in our county, but not everyone's doing, a lot of people are coming back that Thursday and Friday. So it might be worth a trade-off in a few of these other areas, trying to sell that to people like 2 weeks is lovely. Go someplace nice.
Not with wrestling.
Negotiate with Frank. Maybe Frank will go somewhere on one of the weeks, so maybe you can take them with you.
I'm very glad he's very active in things, but it does make it tricky to try to plan getting to someplace warm in the middle of winter.
So, yeah.
You can find a wrestling tournament in Orlando or something.
There you go. So 2 opportunities for traveling
Yeah.
competition. But, so we'll have a final draft. I don't anticipate too much difference from this unless someone objected to 2 weeks after Christmas, but I think that's some nice recovery time for everyone.
I'll probably be back to work.
Different schedule.
Yeah. We haven't seen our calendar yet.
All right, so if you have any questions or thoughts, let me know. And I'll talk it over with Wada and then we'll have something for you.
Sounds good.
Moving on to opportunities for the board to be heard. Does anybody have anything to say they want to hear? I do want to just apprise you of a conversation that has somewhat been ongoing for me about the mural in the gymnasium. Somebody did contact me because they had some concerns that it was not balanced with male and female representation of the number of sports that we had. And so when the artist came to do the touch-up, Mr. Duty actually did reach out to him and asked him about doing something to maybe enhance the number of girls' sports or whatever was on there. And that cost for that would have been extremely prohibitive.
It's much more expensive now.
Oh, yeah, Tony was a student here.
So that's probably worth a lot right there.
But she did but she never came and, talked to the board about her concerns. So after, that particular part of the conversation just kind of, but she did reach out again and was just asking if there were ways that we could showcase how the number of girls' sports that we have and boys' sports, so that everybody is equally represented. And I did think that, might be something that could be looked at and just we have, not necessarily in the gym or the mural or painting, but we do have the showcases that are in the hallways and, maybe we can suggest that, they take a look at how those sports programs are. And I'll be perfectly honest, and I'll do a checklist, make sure that.
Do we have any up and coming high school artists who would be willing to do some sort of art? Similar to what Scott did in the gym, but like maybe something different for the 20.
I would need to speak with Mr. North. I'm not down there all the time now, so I lose a little track. I would say that, the arts, that type of art is not overly popular. So, we have a handful of students that really go all the way through and are, I don't know if there's a lot of different.
But I think using the showcases to showcase, we have a girls wrestling team now, so this time of year we could be showcasing that and basketball, like girls wrestling, boys basketball, boys wrestling. Like there's no reason that we couldn't put more of that information out there.
And there's opportunities there to use graphic design. There's other mediums that could be employed, not just something, painted on the
Not necessarily like a mural, but something.
But, something that's maybe more reflective of the kids' interests.
Photographs of them in action
And just to,
during the game, them on a wall.
just so that we're mindful that we're equally showcasing, the activities that we have here, and not just sports, but we have a lot of other activities too that kids take part in. So, well, and I'll be honest with you, I do not, tally, how many times.
I love the photographs of the students, of one children play, all the kids doing all these different activities.
Yeah.
Every time I walk in there, I look for those photographs.
And we did, look, there's photographs.
Yeah.
And, so, yeah, I think now when I first got here, there was seemed to be a sentiment that was conveyed to me that there was to be no murals or anything of that sort to preserve the historical nature of the building. Would that be accurate assessment or, there was something that was done in the vestibule area over by the gym, or there was something, I don't know. I'm not
Meaning that they
saying
don't want them to be changed or they don't want anything added.
they don't want anything, there was not to be any murals,
exterior?
things on the walls or
I think
The
it could be
exterior?
painted on.
in the hallways.
I mean, you could hang it, you can hang
Good
something
idea.
on a campus or, that's a good idea.
Colors.
But there's, if somebody were thinking about the historical nature of the building, the regulations are actually just for the facade of the building, so. There isn't,
Yeah.
so there isn't anything that dictates that I'm aware of what we want to do on the inside, and so I think that's something that's a collective decision of
Yeah,
or the faculty that's here.
I think it'd be one thing to say we wanted to take the stained glass out of the windows, but it's altogether
Right.
another to say we want to
Well, I
highlight
think,
our students.
you want it to feel like, gives, you want it to reflective of our community and.
Yeah, we want to highlight what our students are doing, have their successes. And doesn't seem like that's too far a reach.
Well, I'll talk to Mr. North and see, what his thoughts are, and, certainly it's a project, and, if you commit in something like that, sometimes it can take quite a bit of time, so.
And materials.
Yeah. So let me talk to him and I'll give you an update.
Just wanted to make you aware that.
Thank you.
So anybody else have any other concerns?
I did just want to, should we mention, that we have we have a meeting for the athletic, merger discussions, with a Cambridge committee as well, so we're meeting, said next week.
Yeah.
On the 23rd, just to have some conversation now that we have the majority of our sports merged. So our two basketball teams, track and softball, are not merged, but just really talking about now, kind of trying to firm up about where do we play games and how do games work? And so every sport kind of does it differently, but having really more of maybe a memorandum of understanding of really kind of what our relationship is, who pays for what. So that there's no surprise bills, so that we're budgeting accordingly.
It's a
So
plan.
really kind of talking about a relationship, and then also possibly having a discussion about, do we have a time, does this apply to everything right now? Do we have a timeline for phase in? We've had discussions for the past few years about basketball, is on the horizon of being merged. And in my opinion, I think it's, time to really have a serious discussion about that with them. My concern is, they do, sounds like they really want to have a commitment to each other. And we've always kind of reached out more times than not just recently did they start reaching out to us a little bit. But more times than not, we've reached out to them and they've been there when we needed us. They're reaching out to us to say, let's commit to each other. And, you know, I think the reality is, and I've seen other districts that don't commit, and, you know, I think we have to have agreeable terms per se and
Yeah.
kind of really look at the details, but there are districts who don't time it and they say, no, we're not going to merge or do, you know, and then when they need to merge, the other school has moved on, that's right near them, so.
This may be a rabbit hole of epic proportions, but what about their mascot? You know, how far do you merge with them, and do you ever get wrapped up into that discussion? where
So
it's
we're not,
detrimental
there,
to ours?
it's a partnership, so what a lot of schools do that will really kind of have that commitment to say, all right, when it's time, we're gonna merge together. What they've done is, so Johnsburg, Minerva, they just recently kind of merged completely, and I'm not saying we're merging completely. These are conversations that we're having about what does this look like for what we're merged now. But what schools do is you get kids from both schools and they come up, they nominate mascots and then you have a joint.
Individually?
No, you have a joint.
Colors, then we don't have to have the
No
mascot
mascots.
argument.
Well, no,
Mascots.
you would, colors that we have.
Saying, so we don't even
But-
have to argue about a mascot.
What a lot of schools do is they have a common mascot,
That-
you
that's
know,
fine,
like the Eagles, the Lightning, I don't know, I'm just making it up, but.
Oh, we shouldn't get involved with that.
No, that's their community.
Well, no, I'm not, it's not their mascot or our mascot, the Generals, it's our mascot as a
It's a
merged
team.
team.
And at what point do you cross that point where it's really our mascot as a team and knowing we've crossed that point?
But we're not,
Well, it becomes a new mascot.
it's an
It's a whole
understanding,
new
pick a
thing.
new
It would
mascot,
be, yeah.
new mascot.
Okay.
For
Both
first
sports,
it
pick
would
a
be
new
different-
mascot. Like they combined, pick a mascot.
That sounds fine to me.
Yeah, it's not like you're gonna be the Indians or the Generals and we're gonna argue
Right.
about that, which is kind of part of like what happens now, right? And so I've talked to some kids who sometimes feel like when it's a Cambridge lead, like they're just like kind of visiting or, you know, they're not real, they're on the team, but they're not part of the team.
What does
that
our
make
student
sense?
board member
Like,
think about that? He's an emerged sporter, right?
He's got the shirt on.
Obviously, we are the home school for wrestling, but did you play football previously?
I did, yeah, last year.
And what do you know?
So in Cambridge, it does feel more as if you're a visitor. Although I didn't play football my freshman and sophomore year, playing my junior year, definitely felt that the position I was in that you do feel more separated from that community. But I also believe that I think that's because how Cambridge runs their football program.
Yeah.
They take a lot of pride in that, and that's Cambridge's program. With our wrestling program, yes, I am part of the host school, but I think there's a lot more community driven. We don't really focus too much on the fact that it's Salem's wrestling team. There's a lot of push to make it between both communities. So I think it's a completely different experience comparing the two. I think the only reason it would feel that way for football again is because Cambridge takes a lot of pride in that football program. So I don't think it's right to compare those two at the very least.
Your experience may have been different too if you had played from like Pee Wee,
From
do you
Pee-wees, yeah.
think, or no?
I think so.
Again, forever.
But even then, a lot of the kids that had played that were from Salem, they didn't get the traction that kids that played their whole life from Cambridge
Yeah.
had. And I think that it has to do with a lot of locality. Those people in Cambridge get more attention because it's their program.
Right, and I think, those are some of the conversations we would have, right, as to how to, the other thing is football was the first one, right? And so it's hard to undo how it started or how it emerged. And, you know, we all now have a coach from Salem on the team. People said, oh, that'll never happen. It happened. So, you know, I think over time, that has the potential to improve. And I think every time we've had a merge, you see less of that effect.
Sure.
But I think those are part of the conversations that our committees have, right? How do we kind of create a community? But they reached out to us and they really said, hey, we want to create a partnership, right? And to me, is
I think
that,
that's
that
something
implies, right?
That's encouraging.
Yes.
And I think one of the ways that we can address the issue of the community is by going with the understanding that, you know, if the football team has 4 home games this year, how many are gonna be on our field?
Well, they talked about, so that really they kind of, the
Yeah,
athletic
but
directors
that's
got together and made notes and did talk about, you know, like that would be talked about, the split. I will tell you though, I mean, we've had this conversation, this is part of the capital, you know, conversation too. I'm not comfortable with saying we want 50% of the football games. I am not comfortable with that scaffolding.
I would agree.
Well, yeah,
I want to look at it. I just, you know, we need, if we want to, their facility is superior in football. And so I think sometimes that needs to be taken into consideration. But maybe we say, well, we'll have the modified games or some of the JV games.
or we get more.
Where having an announcer isn't that as big of a deal, right?
Yeah.
Like you don't have an announcer for modified. So maybe because they do have a superior facility at this point, if we did decide that we want to, you know, again, they took that press box out, the bleachers, because they're like, oh, we're merging
Yeah.
and it's Cambridge's team, there's no point. I disagree with that, you know, but that's something more of a discussion that we should have about that if we want to try to add that back in.
And if we look at that with the JV and the modified, then that, again, can alleviate that problem at the varsity level. Well, when I was in 8th grade, I played all my games at Salem. I did all my practices there. So now you've got that
Right.
mesh is there.
And you feel like it's
Yeah.
both. The other piece of it is, I would say that, you know, right now, the way the merges have worked out for fall, they're the lead in all the fall teams. It's even practice sites. There's no way you know, so we have to talk about busing. But it's really difficult to say, we're gonna send all of our kids to Salem except for field hockey. It's a transportation.
Well, and it's also a field situation.
Right.
Like the field
Fields and
hockey fields in
timing.
Cambridge are flatter than the field hockey fields here. The football field facility is different. I mean, I think it's all about give or take, and I think those are the discussions that we have to have. So continuing this conversation, I think makes it challenging because we're kind of just guessing at this point. So
Right,
after
and
we
so-
talk, it'll be a better.
But I think
One thing's for sure, you have to be forward-looking, you have to be thinking a couple of years out, because we have major planning to do, and we don't want to enter murky waters with a clearly expensive and
think so
troubling
far
and
we've been-
time-consuming challenge that
We've
is.
been very
that they're
lucky with the
facing.
situations that we've had and they've worked out pretty
Yeah.
well.
Yes,
So I feel-
and they have, they're good neighbors. Again, you know, football, they provided an opportunity for our kids who wanted to play football when we could not provide that. And I think that's come a long way, and it's not where some of our other mergers are, but I think, you know, overall, it's a good partnership from my understanding historically and my current experience. And I don't know, just to be general, not all merger partnerships out there are like that. And there are some schools that have merged with this sport merged with 1 or 2 schools for 1 sport, 2 sports, and then got a 3rd school for another sport. It's a complete nightmare for the
And
AD.
transportation.
Transportation.
I
You know,
think we're
so
lucky with the partnership.
it is a give and take, but we do need merge partners. So it's something that, you know, it may not be completely equal always. And at this point, we might have to accept that.
Easy sounds good.
But you know, it's something that, and you evaluate it every year because the merger requires that, correct?
Well, the merger requires renewals in the section does. However, it's unless we had a big surge in population, it'll be highly unlikely that it would ever be undone. However, if it wasn't harmonious and not working well, that would be another thing. But we have other things that will be discussed. We'll bring back to the board updates. We have to talk about coaching and, you know, like, just so there's some of those things. You want 1 coach, 2 coaches. How does that work? Are they both co-coaches? Is one a head coach and assistant coach? You know, like, those are the things that are starting to get messy that do need to be discussed. So we will bring that back. So it's Ann and Heidi, myself, Will Moore, our athletic director, and Sean Brainy, and we will so it'll be next Tuesday. And so, well, if you have any thoughts or something you want us to have our minds on, probably be a 2 or 3 meetings. And then we'll have a better direction.
I think the more you put it on the table, one side may think it's completely clear, and it's not. So I think sometimes just opening up those conversations just helps everybody to.
I mean, I do think some of the communications in the merged sports are challenging, so that's something that,
Yes,
I
that's
mean,
a-
now using different apps, I know Cambridge has one app for wrestling, Salem has the other app, like those
Right.
things, if we can figure out how to come up with one harmonious thing that works.
right,
would be
one
awesome.
code of conduct. So
Yes.
sometimes we discipline our athletes and then they can't play
Yeah.
or something, and vice versa. And it's like, well, that person did that over at their school and they get to play. How come I can't play, or vice versa? And so having one athletic code of conduct, having one coach's handbook. So it's now, oh, who's the lead team, and we're using their code of conduct or their
Right.
coaching handbook. So,
Yeah.
and those are the things that they have also a desire to put together. So there'll be some work.
So you already mentioned that we have our next budget workshop coming up. And at this point, I would like to open the meeting up again to the public if there is anybody who has any questions or concerns.
Vote to. Dave Allard, I don't know if it's recorded or not. A few quick things. You're gonna combine the 2 teams. I would suggest going all in on whoever has the best facilities. You know, you got Indian generals, call them Chiefs.
Oh, I don't know.
You can get Narcan from Oasis free. I don't know if you guys get it free, but
So we have to, we will explore that. We do have a relationship with Oasis and some of their
Yeah, 'cause-
trainings, but we have to have board policy. The New York State Education Department gives us requirements. So,
I
They're
would
very good
suggest
at that.
anybody you have trained, have it with them, just because as much of that stuff in the country as it is, liable to be accidental as much as anything else. I can hit on a couple of transportation things just because I drive bus, but you're liable to have a couple of retirements this year. I mean, I'm 67, I'm your newest driver. I would suggest you get with your next higher element, whether that's, you know, what you call it, the BOCES over there. Somebody needs to contact Stefanik's office. Congress needs to do something because you got all those early social security people that don't want to do anything because they're afraid it's going to hit their social security. Every one of us has lost months of social security just by trying to get the kids where they need to go. So, I mean, that's got to be addressed. There's got to be some incentive to get people to drive, or I don't understand why they're not doing it. And, you know, bus driving is not the only field that's critically short. As far as my initial, I don't want to say complaint, but you said you have a new curriculum in math this year. Based on what I'm seeing, it's not working. I mean, that's probably oversimplified, but that's what I see. And I'm wondering, do the teachers have the authority and the ability to teach math and reading the same way we were taught? That work?
so we have to follow the framework of New York State's next gen standards, so next generation standards. So they give us specific topics that they are going to teach. And then, so we have to follow that and align to that so that the testing, so they'll be prepared for the testing. So
Say screw
I
the
will
testing,
give you
we
a
need to
call.
worry
We'll
about the
talk
kids.
about it a little more.
Somebody's got to push back on that. I mean, that's ridiculous. I mean, the government loves to, you know, if something ain't broken, let's fix it till it is. And this is broken and nobody's pushing back on it. Everybody's trying to
But,
operate
and,
with
but
broken
you
equipment.
are using the state test data to assess that it's broken, so, you know, that's where we have to be within New York State's framework.
Somebody's got to push back on that. It's not working. How do you do that? Is anybody pushing back on it? Because, I mean, it's obvious, even by your own testing, that we're failing.
Can I speak just 1 second on it? I've been out of the profession for a few years now, but I think that the teachers that are sitting in here could probably back this up. Yes, there is pushback. It's a slow, tedious process. We're dealing with the grinding wheels of New York State government. But there is pushback. There has been progress made over the years in several areas, where, you know, we look at, okay, students aren't succeeding. Why aren't they succeeding? Well, because the test is so askew. Okay, so rather than writing in a whole new test for next year, let's reevaluate the way that we grade that test. What's going to be an acceptable grade? I understand your concern. Believe me, I'm dealing with a struggling student as well. So I understand your concern very, very well. But the scope and sequence that the state puts out is something that teachers are required to follow.
Yeah, but I mean.
And that's the first year of the math curriculum.
Right.
We just started using it this year.
Yeah.
That testing data was from last year's testing data. So this is the first year.
Okay, well, I'm seeing the grades from a fairly bright kid.
Mhm.
So it's, you know, at first I thought it was just him. And then I'm talking with other parents. No, it's not just him.
But the pushback goes on. The pushback goes on from the Committee of 100 on the union side. It goes on from the School Board Association, the legislative breakfast that we're going to this week.
Yeah, but
The
that's
push-
just
the
a
pushback-
tool to find out what they've learned.
Mhm.
I don't see how you can blame the test.
We're not.
I didn't mean to sound like I was blaming the test. Well, I think the tests are often, I'll say often,
Well, they are out of level testing.
yes.
They are designed to be challenging in many
Yeah.
ways. But this is actually something, you know, even though it does go to the heart of what we do, it is not something that this board has any real
Yeah.
control over. So
Am I wrong in believing that, in case of math, kids can't do it in their head, they have to write out all the work?
I don't know what all of the teachers' explanation
Any
is.
teachers, no? No. I mean, that's what I'm told from my fifth grader.
you know, this is actually something that we can't solve or explain here. We are not operational. The board does not have, the day-to-day operation and understanding of how all of those things work. So that would be something that you would have to follow up with either one of the principals, the teachers, or the superintendent, because this is really beyond the scope of what we can answer.
Okay, I mean, that just strikes me as strange. You're the Board of Education. I would think you'd be talking about education. I know you're talking about everything that goes around it. I mean, if I wasn't here and said something, the grades that these students are getting probably wouldn't even have been discussed, would it?
Yeah, it was discussed last meeting. We
It
talked
was-
about it.
And I do a presentation every October, November. I present to the board and to the community that's here, all of our results, what we're doing. If you look at, our district goals and priorities, achievement is a priority. Our goals this year to raise, test scores, to raise achievement, graduation rate, attendance. So yes,
And you're doing something to try and achieve those goals?
yes.
I mean, other than just stating them?
Yeah, but you're moving an army, you're not simply doing a small task. It's a monumental task that requires coordination and time.
Yeah, but if you don't get these kids now, they're never gonna get it.
It's true.
I mean, we're just gonna keep graduating kids that, there's no kid left behind, so they're just gonna keep graduating, not knowing, say it, but they're not gonna be up to par with. I mean, I'm amazed when a kid can't read an analog clock or tie their shoes. You know, they can't do times tables. You do times tables, you have division. It's that simple. That's just memorization, so. All right, I mean,
Thank you.
hopefully we can talk, and I'm sure I'll be at more meetings.
Is there any further comments or questions for the board?
Sandy, thank you for everything you do.
There's one there. I know you have one life back in the building. It'd probably be wise to get a few more, especially in the cafeteria.
We actually just was talking to our safety rep today about that. So it's on the list, yes.
Thank you.
I do actually have one, thanks. Oh, I'm.
Oh, no, you have I thought you had a comment? You have a comment or? Do you have a comment or?
Sandy Bramer, I'm the nurse. I do have a life back because of Dave. Fortunately, thank God above, never had to use it, but I do have one, so. Don't want to say I want to use it, but I've seen so much, no, I don't want to use it ever. But I've seen,
It's good to have.
I've seen like lots of videos and I've read lots of feedback on it. And I don't know if there, I'm sure there's a law for everything, but I think because it's kind of new, there's not a lot of, I don't think they're like FDA backed or whatever. But boy, I gotta tell you, from what I've seen, Heimlich maneuver is not 100%.
Yeah.
Fortunately, it's just not. And from what I've seen, which I know we can skew things whichever way you want to go, they do seem to be very, very effective. So anybody cares anything about what I have to say, I would love to see them. Cafeteria, the buses, sports bags. You just never know.
Form in the
I'm sorry.
Fill it out in your order form for the
The
budget.
thing is though, Mrs. Adams, I don't know if we're allowed to have them by law because they're not, from what I've read, I don't know that we're allowed to have them in school.
I'll look into it, I believe.
Yeah, can we? And as somebody that years ago, when I was first in college, I was choking in a restaurant and somebody came along and did the Heimlich on me. And so thank gosh for him. But, you know, I know it's not foolproof. Doesn't always work and nothing is 100%, but boy, I'd love to see him everywhere, especially our cafeteria. So that's all. Thank
I
you.
have to figure out what it was.
Oh,
Thank you.
I didn't know what it
It's
was.
all over the place lately.
Oh, you have service?
Do we need a?
Life back?
I was very limited though. Thank you.
If there's no other comment from the public, then since we do not have the need for an executive session.
2 times in a row.
So let's entertain a motion to adjourn the meeting. Motion by Heidi,
Second.
second by Peter. All those in favor, please signify by raising your hand. Motion carried. Thank you very much.